I equate our work to that of an Olympic athlete. It's not just running the race. Olympic athletes are obsessed with their craft. They look at the whole person. So too should we in law enforcement and in the military.
Many may not know you've been in security forces. As an active duty officer, you went into the FBI, and you've really been in this public safety kind of realm. But we're going to dive in with, I think, a moment in time that really shaped you and just in something I learned about you just recently. So you're 5 years old, and you shared with me that your dad actually, he took his life, death by suicide, right? And it shaped you in a way when you're thinking about your role in public safety. Do you mind kind of sharing that with us?
When I was 5 years old, my dad died by suicide, and I was an only child, and he was my absolute hero. He was a local police officer, so my earliest memories of childhood were wearing his uniform and seeing the squad car and being around officers. And I think that really solidified my future in public safety.
Tell me, as a 5-year-old, what did that start to look like? Where did you see that show up in school, in your sports, like just in the way you lived? How did you navigate that?
I became very, very active. And I don't know if that was by design or divine intervention or what, but it was kind of, the object in motion stays in motion. I was on the run, literally on the run, loved to run. Long distance. I quickly got into Civil Air Patrol as soon as I was old enough to do so and got exposed to the Air Force that way. I got my private pilot's license at 17. I soloed before I got my driver's license and was destined to come to the academy.
Wow. I mean, you're accomplishing so much so quickly. Were you always like that? Did you see others in your life like that? Was your dad that way?
It's interesting in retrospect to see if that was inherited or that was kind of a response to the trauma. I kind of think it was a response. As we're talking, I remember I was the youngest Red Cross CPR instructor for the county at 15. I formed a canine search and rescue unit for police departments to train dogs to help find missing people. And I guess that was just a response to what had happened. And it really planted a seed in me that life is short. And I've had this drive to just leave it all on the field, to keep moving forward. As I progressed in the academy, public safety, protecting people continued to resonate with me. And was one of the reasons I chose behavioral science as a track. And then to tie it back to my dad, to understand why somebody with a family would take their own life was still something that I was struggling with. And so that really led me to a psychology track. But this drumbeat of public safety really continued to resonate with me. And it's really the main reason that I chose security forces.
When I think about the pace in which security forces and a lot of our law enforcement roles live in, my question for you might be, how did you help those handle kind of challenging moments or stress, right? You kind of go towards give me more, take on more, stay busy. Not everyone is wired the same. So did you have airmen that struggled in how they dealt with, things, trauma, et cetera? And how did you coach or lead them through that, really?
Back then, there really wasn't a lot of support.
Right.
There really wasn't a recognition. There was still a stigma, both in the military and law enforcement, of I can't disclose that I'm having a problem. You're going to take my security clearance. You're going to take my weapon. I'm going to lose my job. I'm going to be embarrassed. And so at that time, there really wasn't a safety net or a openness to discuss it. So you kind of just dealt with it. So it was more of telegraphing as a leader of what your values were in hopes that people would kind of, reach out if they needed help. In my time in the FBI, I was able to influence decisions and policies to be able to be more accommodating to kind of focus on the whole person. But going through as a case agent for 13 years on a violent crime squad, of being exposed to some of the different things that my dad was exposed to, that others were exposed to, it really laid a foundation as I pursued leadership to be able to have greater influence as I moved up the organization to set that culture towards mental fitness, and resilience, and really as a function of optimizing performance. Law enforcement and military both over the past 20 years has made significant progress in kind of chipping away at that stigma. We're not where we need to be yet, but we're making really, really good progress. I equate our work to that of an Olympic athlete. It's not just running the race. Olympic athletes are obsessed with their craft, yes. Whether it is nutrition, sleep, mental imagery, different types of runs to test different types of muscles and stamina and endurance, but they look at the whole person. So too should we in law enforcement and in the military. I was very fortunate at our entry-level senior executive service position to be at our headquarters and be responsible for, it's called our employee health and performance section, but the clinical staff at the FBI, the psychologists, psychiatrists, doctors, nurses, social workers, to be able to drive that culture and to move from post-traumatic stress to post-traumatic growth. And I needed to experience that as an agent. I needed to be on mass casualty scenes. I needed to be engaged with victims of crime to understand what that looked like, what that felt like, to project what my dad had experienced, but to recognize as humans, we are not wired to see what we are requiring our people to see and do time and time again. And so to provide mental health counseling, which in the FBI we do not only for the employee, but for their spouse, which I think is very important, and kids for that matter, to be able to recognize that, you're not superhuman. It's okay to not be okay. And so that's been rewarding to drive that culture, to push the creation of employee assistance counselors. These are mental health practitioners, chaplains, peers, just to be able to let that culture permeate and to be able to demonstrate from the top. I'm very open about my dad and how that has shaped my life, to be able to telegraph that post-traumatic growth is possible.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this leadership lesson, watch the full episode by hitting the thumbnail here and subscribe now to get the latest episodes of Long Blue Leadership delivered directly to your YouTube feed or wherever you get your podcasts.